Hello everyone, my name is Filip and I'm here to talk to you about how to sell shovels in the games industry. Or a more user-friendly name, what are your alternatives for joining the games industry? We've had some really good talks so far about what you can do when you're actually in the games industry and what you can do to actually join the games industry, but what if you want to find some alternatives to that? So a little bit of background about myself. I'm a University of Suffolk computer games design graduate. Back in 2014, I finished university from a computer games design course, and I was lucky enough to get an internship at Ubisoft, which then turned into a 2-year gig actually working on Watch Dogs 2 as a games designer. I then went on to make my own games for a bit, and I've been working with various teams of different sizes, shapes, and forms, with teams of quite diverse people, actually making games and non-games projects. And a lot of those have been related to university and college students. In particular, the things that I'm working on at the moment are I'm organizing the Global Game Jam in my hometown of Bucharest in Romania. And up until this year, we were the only Global Game Jam site in the whole country. So a lot of participants at the Global Game Jam are students, and I've had the opportunity to work with quite a few of them and talk to them about their games and how they saw the Game Jam format as opposed to actually making a full-fledged game in something like 6 months or a year. I'm also one of the organizers for GameAnglia. We're a project in the east of England that aims to unite the games industry there under a single banner, because while the industry in Cambridge is absolutely amazing, that the same thing can't be said really about Norfolk or Suffolk or Essex, Hertfordshire or Bedfordshire. And what we're trying to do is to extend collaboration, and that has a lot to do with students, because you guys are the next generation. And that also extends to my Eastern European roots, where I'm one of the co-founders for Almost a Hero, which is an initiative to actually create a common language and a common portfolio of education for a high school and college level throughout Eastern Europe, which is quite a big undertaking, but we're making some good steps towards that. So you're here because you make games. And the games industry is a really great place at the moment. We have more indie games than ever actually being recognized in places like the Indie Games Festival. We have engines which allow us to make any sort of games, from physics-based bullet hells to text adventures, right? And we can access most of those mostly for free, right? Anybody can make a game. That's absolutely brilliant. And even better than that, anybody can actually publish those games either on mobile or on PC. And especially with Unreal and with Unity, we can go further and actually publish them on the Switch, as was mentioned earlier, or on the big game consoles. So it's a really good time to actually make a game and to be a game developer. And we've seen that attention from the media recently. It looks like we finally struck gold, right? If we look at Flappy Bird, which was a few years ago, which was making insane amounts of money, to then having a look at titles like GTA 5, the most profitable entertainment product of all times, right? Not just game, but actually that beat film, it beat books, and we see that every day, right? The games industry is bigger than the Hollywood industry, and that's garnered attention from Forbes, it's garnered attention from The Guardian, and most mass media publications. It's absolutely amazing to be a game developer nowadays, right? Far Cry 5 managed to beat Black Panther in terms of revenue in the first weekend. But is it really that good to be a game developer out there in terms of actually making a living? These are all of the games that have come out on Steam since Monday. So there's about 30 games out there. I don't know how many of you have actually bought a game since Monday. I don't know how many of you have actually spent time playing new games since Monday. I know that my Steam library at the moment still has about 110 days left in terms of games that I need to play. And I know that I have games in my Steam library, in my Humble Bundle library, that I probably won't get to play for the rest of my life. right? And we've seen that. These are some charts from Steam Spy. So up until 2017, an average indie game had about 5,000 users, 5,000 players that actually played your game. In 2017, that number went down to 1,500. And the prices are going down as well, just to keep up with the competition. So a game that would normally cost $4, it up until 2017 now costs about $3, right? Because there's more and more games out there. And I actually have a question for you. Who here has made a game? Just a quick show of hands. Good, I'd be worried otherwise. Who here has published a game on the App Store or on the Play Store or on Steam or on itch?
Itch.
Yeah.
Yes.
Does itch count?
Yeah, itch definitely counts.
Without any payments? Like
Yeah, Okay, that's great. There have actually been almost 70,000 games published on itch last year. So how many of you have actually made more than £100 in revenue from your games? Right. Who here believes that games can be a force for good? Okay.
Depends on how you define good.
Well, let me put that another way. How many here actually think that games can have a meaningful positive impact on their players? Okay.
Extremely subjective, but
Okay. And who here want to make those games? Those games that get your players to have a meaningful impact? That want to have a meaningful impact on your players. Okay, that's great. It means that you're definitely the target audience for my talk. Otherwise, I would have been slightly worried and walked out the door. Actually, this whole hype that the industry is building at the moment, right? Those headlines that we've seen, reminded me of something else when I first saw that, and it reminded me of the California gold rush of the 1800s. Right, we had very similar headlines of, oh my God, the California gold region seems inexhaustible at the moment. Just go there. And so many people listened to that they had to declare California officially a state. They literally fast-tracked it because they suddenly had 300,000 people move into that state in 1 year. Right? People were literally selling all of their possessions just to get a boat ride to California, just to participate in the gold rush. And this whole thing was started by one person who had a tiny bottle of water filled with gold dust, and he was running from town to town, from settlement to settlement, telling people that gold, we've struck gold, there's so much gold out there, you just have to become a miner, right? That reminds us a bit of the blockchain at the moment, but we'll go past that. What those stories and what he failed to mention was that he went there and he was getting people in on the California gold rush hype after he had bought all of the mining tools. So he made a huge profit actually selling those mining tools, literally selling shovels in a gold rush. So the people after the initial early adopters got in and actually made a profit off of mining gold, the people who ended up being able to make a living off of the California gold rush were the people who built the infrastructure, the people who finished the East-West Railway in California, the people who had convenience stores, who were able to actually provide sustenance for the miners, and the people who were making the clothes, the people who were building the houses, and the people who were painting the houses. There's actually the story of the first African-American woman millionaire was someone who started by operating a laundry wash for the miners in Colorado. So yes, it is a great time to make a game, right? We have the BAFTA Game Awards tomorrow. Is anybody here going to those? We have the IGF, the Independent Games Festival, which happened last month, and we've seen some amazing games come out of that. We have games which make a positive impact, and we have charities which use games as a means of helping people. We have games being designed to help people with trauma. We have games being designed to actually help people overcome their fear of heights or their fear of social anxiety, and that's absolutely great as somebody who has social anxiety. But it might not be the best time to actually make a game if you just want to make a living off of it. And that's what that's what I want to talk to you about. I have a really good friend of mine, former classmate from university, who made this really awesome game, right? Him and 3 other friends spent about 3 years making this game, and the game is beautiful. It tells an amazing story, and they've had critical success. They have amazing awards posted on their wall, and they've sold about 8,000 copies, which is really great for an indie game, especially when you're going to the paid mobile market. However, when you think about it, after the App Store has taken their cut, and after you realize that they've worked for 3 years on it and they've split the revenue equally, they've made about £600 per year of development, right? You get more than that by working at McDonald's. So I was talking to this person, and they told me, Chris, I believe that everybody wants to make Minecraft, right? But or PUBG, but what people actually realize after they get into this is that they need to make rent more than that. And that's something that you're going to be faced with once you, or you might already be facing this, but you're definitely going to be faced with this after you finish university. And what I'm here to talk to you about is about the route into crafting shovels by day and crafting games by night. The reason for that is that you want your day job to be related to games, so that when you finish your day job, you go home and you can work on your own game after you've managed to catch up with all of the game industry on Twitter, right? While at your day job, because it's part of your job. After you've managed to watch GDC, the free GDC talks during your day job, and so on. Because there's nothing more disconnecting and nothing more disheartening than spending your day job making money in an industry that's completely different from games, just to then go home and have to switch into this game developer mode and having to catch up with everything that's been happening over the day, having to catch up with your news and having to watch videos when you could be spending that time actually making games. Alright, so you don't want your relationship with games to look like this during the day. You want your relationship with games to actually look like this. And I'm going to talk to you a bit about 2 types of routes into industries which are adjacent to games. I'm going to give you some examples if you want to join an already existing company or movement, and then I'm going to talk a bit about what you can do if you want to start your own gig. Right. So first, you can go into companies which already provide services which are being used in the games industry heavily, and we've already talked about some of those. Things like marketing or localization, things like PR or QA or playtesting and market research. And there's a really good reason why you want to do that during your day job. That's because there's 2 reasons for that. First is because you get to actually meet a lot of really awesome game developers. So for example, if you were to create the marketing plan that went so well for the new Call of Duty, you will end up working with some of the Call of Duty developers. If you were to work in a company that does QA for the new Assassin's Creed, and that's going to mostly be Ubisoft, you're going to actually work with some of the developers for Assassin's Creed, and that opens up a lot of doors. And we also need more playtesters and market researchers out there for games. So, and the second reason for that is because once you have your game, once you've finished your game, and you're ready to release it, you will have all of these adjacent skills that you need, and that are going to put you above 95% or so of indie game developers out there, because you'll know how to make a marketing plan while you're working on the game, and you will know that you shouldn't start your PR campaign after you finish the game. Right? You're going to know how to do QA, or you're going to know you're going to know people who can help you localize your game into the languages which aren't spoken by the English world. Right? Other routes are to help make things for games, such as join a game band and make game music, maybe make chiptune music with a band. Or join a hardware company. So the Ukie has this awesome game map, and on it you will have, and we're going to go a bit more into this a bit later, but on it you have companies which provide services for games. One of the only hardware companies really that's there is the Raspberry Pi, just because we can use Raspberry Pi so much in games. So if you join, you can join that. You can join a company like that. You can join an esports team or create an esports team, or you can join a company which organizes events. That can be events such as all of the BAFTA events that we've heard about earlier. Those can be events such as Develop Brighton, as EGX, or even GameAnglia. We're organizing the biggest game development conference in the east of England. So if you're from that area, we're more than happy to talk to you. We are not for profit and all of us are volunteers, so we can't pay you, but we can make sure that you're going to have an amazing experience. Or you can go into education. So most of you, if not all of you, are university students. Is there anybody here who's not a university student? Okay, is there anybody here who's an FE student? Okay. If you're university students or if you've graduated from university, you can actually go and teach at an FE level, teach high school and college students. And this is really important at the moment because there's so many programs which, so many colleges which actually create game development curriculums and programs, but they don't have people with game development experience teaching them. They have people with film experience or with general media or IT experience. It's so important to have game developers teach other game developers because you've made games. You've made the mistakes that you can then go and teach your students not to make. They're going to make different mistakes, but hopefully they're going to be better mistakes than the ones that you have done. We need more academic researchers simply because things like motion sickness in VR is still a thing, right? We need people to research how to not have motion sickness in VR and then tell others about it and not be confined by an NDA. We need more people to do academic writing and to write books. So who here has read about the MDA framework? Okay. Who here has read about, knows about the taxonomy of the game players? Okay, that's still about half of you, right? Those papers were published 20 years ago. We need new ones. We need papers and studies which build on that. And lastly, if you want to join a movement or a group or a company, we need more game historians. We need more anthropologists who study games. And we need more people who do social research. Because just as games affect society, society affects games. And there's not enough people studying and talking about that. Right? We've seen that and we will continue to see that as more and more games are being made in more and more diverse parts of the world. The fact that local culture affects games and games affect local culture. The question is how? We need more people to study that and to talk about that. And more recently, we need people into legislative design because when you look at it, laws are just very complex sets of rules, right? If you look at something like the US Constitution or any sort of law, you can transpose that into a if this then that, else this, right? These are things, these are systems that we as game designers actually create, and it would be really great to have more people who have had practice in creating rule systems and fighting cheaters into legislative design. And speaking of legislative design, we need more people working in or helping create laws about games. Because we've seen recently that games are a very hot topic with subjects like, do games cause violence? With subjects like, are loot boxes actually gambling? Right? Not many of the people who advise on that have actual game development experience. So we need more people into those spheres as well. So these are just some of the routes that you can use to stay within a sphere that's relevant to games while at the same time making your own games. And they're going to give you some absolutely amazing skills that you can then put on your portfolio when you think it's time to join a game company or if you keep on trying to join a games company or publish your own game. Not to mention all of the connections that you can make if you join a group such as the BAFTA crew or if you join a group such as, I know, the Games Foundation or the Foundation. What about if you want to start your own thing? Well, you can take a route similar to the one that we've talked about before. So does anybody here speak a second language? Okay, all of you can actually go into localization and help people localize your games. You can even get paid for it. I've done a bit of that as a Romanian, and not many people want to translate their games into Romanian, there's about 22 million people who speak Romanian who like to play games. So think about those markets as well. You can then go and do community management. Is anybody here involved with their students' union? Okay. Is anybody here part of a guild in any sort of multiplayer game or a group of people? Yes. Okay. You have the ability to become a community manager, and it's so important to actually understand that multiplayer games are made up of a bunch of people who need to be able to communicate with the developer, right, Chris, on that one? Do you keep your community managers in-house?
Yes. Yeah.
And did you ever, any idea if you've ever recruited from the community?
Off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you.
Okay. I have a personal friend of mine who's managed to make a multiplayer game that used to have about 1,000 players, right? Maybe 20 of them online at the same time. Not very good numbers. What they've done was that they realized that they had a very vocal member on their Discord channel who was helping players out, and they were like, well, why don't you join the company? We'll give you a revenue share scheme, and the more money we make, the more money you make, and you help us manage the community because you're already doing that for free. Great deal. They now have 60,000 players with at least 2,000 players concurrently online, off of being able to identify and to hire a good community manager with something that they were already doing. So this could be another route for you. You can also make trailers and cinematics if you're inclined into creating videos, because there's so many bad trailers out there, especially for indie games, that the moment that you're going to be able to make a good game trailer, you're almost instantly going to be talent spotted. And it's also really good for your own game. It's the same with music and with composers. We need more games which actually use music and sounds as part of their mechanics and as part of their core experience. We also need more game journalists. We need more streamers. We need more influencers and video creators and podcast creators. Does anybody here watch Extra Credits?
Used to.
Okay. Does anybody here know about Mark Brown and the Game Maker's Toolkit? Okay. We need more people who put out content for indie game developers and for game developers in general. We need more people to actually go and find awesome games to play. And we need more people to write about games. Does anybody here watch Twitch?
Yeah.
Great. Does anybody here stream on Twitch? Okay. Yes. Good.
Well, we actually do with Chris, yes, we do.
Brilliant. Yeah, we need more streamers out there, right? Because just as 30 games get launched between Monday and today, I can tell you that maybe one of those has managed to get a streamer's attention. So build an audience, and then you'll be the person who reveals Hearthstone cards live, and you get to work with Blizzard developers. So consider that, right? And you can also create create things that help make games. So that can be anything from tools to mods, as we were talking about earlier. And somebody actually told me that for their company, their AAA company, modders are seen as the fanfic writers of their game. Or you can just go straight ahead and write fanfiction about all of those sexy dragons that we were talking about. Right. You can write books. So I don't know how many of you here know that the Dragon Age series also has a series of comics and books. The Assassin's Creed series also has a series of comics and books. And you can be those writers. We need more people who make assets, free to use assets on the Unity store, for example, as well as the plugins that I mentioned earlier. You can make your own events, from fighting tournaments to game conferences, right? The whole idea behind GameAnglia started because my other co-founder and myself were like, we should do something that engages the students in the east of England. Let's make a game development conference. And we then reached out to game creators. And we had people like Rihanna Pratchett and Brenda and John Romero come and talk at our conference. So don't be afraid to start things. Or you can make hardware. How many of you here know about Child's Play? Okay, so there's a charity out there that actually helps children play, helps children in need by organizing tournaments and events where people play games and donate. There's also a charity that creates custom hardware for people with disabilities to allow them to play games. Right? Those are things that you can help in. And actually, does anybody here know about the Alt Control Party? No? There's going to be an event this evening that's free for everybody to attend that showcases game creators creating alternate controllers for games and games for those controllers. So if you're interested in that, do let me know. Again, as I said, it's free entry, it's from 7. And I think you need to be 18 and over, but I think that's not going to be an issue with you. Or you can create physical merchandise. This can be anything from cosplay outfits and cosplay costumes to actual plushies or game pieces. Because there's nothing more important than being able to showcase a game with something unique to it. Be it that your game suddenly has its main character 3D printed and that you're giving that as a back reward, to things like having an amazing cosplay of your main character. Right. And lastly, I want to tell you a bit about the UK industry and why it's really important that we get more people go into alternate routes into the games industry. So this is the UK games map. It has about 2,300 game development companies on it. And if we take those out, we're left with the universities and the game service companies out there. There's 95 universities on the map. And once we take those out, we realize that there's only 149 game service companies out there. So the white space here, as you can see, is quite big. In the east of England, once we take out Cambridge because they're special, we have 2 game service companies, right? And out of those 2, one of them is here today, and they're the people from OPM. So the white space is there, as you can see. You can go there and make a name for yourself in something that's really important for games, and that's something that's really valuable for games. And while you do that, you have to realize that you're going to gain invaluable skills for your own game, for your own meaningful game, right? That's what you told me, and that's what you told the person before me that you want to make. You want to make games for entertainment, you want to make games for education, you want to make games that have a meaningful impact. The last one that was said was profit, and I was like, yes, this fits into my presentation really well. So yeah, go out there and sell shovels for the games industry by day while you're making your own games by night. Because in the end, the whole world needs you to make bold, beautiful games, and sometimes that means not thinking about the profit because you've already sorted rent through other means. Thank you. Any questions or discussion topics? Yes?
Isn't there a risk of alienation if you work only in the gaming industry?
Sorry?
Like if you work during the day, you already work in the doing games in the game industry, and you make games in the night. Isn't there a risk of alienation on what you're doing?
There's more ways of approaching that. So if you're working, say, for a AAA company making games during the day, it might be that you're not allowed to make games during the night due to the NDAs and the contracts that you sign. But let's say that you take one of the routes that I've mentioned and you go working for a marketing company that also does games during the day, and you help create marketing plans for other games during the day, and then you go and make your own games during the night, the evening. Let's keep it at the evening. That's going to give you some really awesome skills and networking opportunities while keeping you in the same mindset that you need to be able to help make your own game the best that it can. However, that shouldn't at any point interfere with your work-life balance. So as long as you see your games as something that can actually take longer, and you don't go into the workaholic mood of I need to crunch, which is really toxic at the moment, and it's an issue, yeah, I think you're going to be okay, because as was mentioned before, you need to have a good work-life balance, and you need to have other interests other than games. What I'm trying to suggest, and as an idea during this presentation, is that if you work for 8 hours or 9 hours during the day, say, making pizzas for Papa John's, the moment you're not going to be able to keep in touch with the industry as well as you would if you were working, say, for a marketing company that helps with games. Because what that switch is really can be really painful and really tiring to work during 9 hours during the day for most of the day, doing something completely different from games, and then going home and be like, okay, so there's those 20 GDC talks that I need to watch, and they're about 1 hour long, so that's going to take me 20 days to actually go and watch through them. I'm advocating that you keep your mindset focused on games while at the same time keeping a balanced work-life balance. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Chris, I've got a question for
Yeah.
you. You know, I think first of all, I think what you're suggesting is a really, really good way of thinking about the workplace, because the world is changing. We know that. And sometimes, you know, within a lifetime, you might do a multitude of different jobs. It's not a job for life anymore, not for most people. And I think that what you're suggesting in terms of how you get involved in an industry by utilising associative industries, I think also makes a great deal of sense. My question is around education, actually. Do you think that currently, in your experience, and obviously you have those connections in East Anglia, that universities are understanding this future shape and potentially introducing more pathways for young people, so that they can actually see the range and variety of career pathways?
Well, I think that definitely universities understand that, because the skills that you develop while at university can be applied in so many other places other than games. However, a disconnect between the lecturers understanding that and the students understanding that they're not going to be the next creative director on, say, Assassin's Creed. Right? There is a difference between the expectations that the students have and what the mentors and the lecturers are trying to tell them. And part of the way that that bridge and that disconnect that gap is bridged is having more events like this, right? It's students understanding that there's a wider world out there other than Call of Duty and GTA 5, understanding that an indie game studio, that they can work with an indie game studio remotely in Azerbaijan, just as well as they can work with Rockstar in Scotland and needing to relocate, and even without needing to relocate. And I think that that's a really good thing to do, going to all of these events and seeing this, and universities are pushing this, and having guest speakers really helps. So having people like OPM come and talk about the careers in games and how to do your portfolio, having people like people from BAFTA coming and talking about all of these games events that you can go to, and having people from all of these connects industries actually coming and talking to students is going to put the students in a much better headspace and a much more accepting mindset, rather than just having a lecturer saying, you know what, you're a programmer, but there's not so many programming jobs in Ipswich at the moment for game developers. Wouldn't you like to go and work for this company which actually does software for I don't know, raising and lowering dam bridges, dams, yeah. So there's definitely a lot of work to do, especially in education, but I think that the lecturers got the right idea. It's about how they communicate that to students.
Thank you. Thanks. Have we got any other questions for Chris?
Okay.
Well, I'd also just like to throw something out to the students. Taking into consideration what Chris has presented to you, are those thoughts about how to manage your aspirations about being, you know, game designers with actually earning a living and getting a kind of foot in the door in the industry? Have you considered those things? Have they been presented to you before through your university or through your programs? Someone tell me.
Yes.
Yes?
Simple, short answer, yes.
Yes.
Long answer, yes. Not like that though, that was very comprehensive and good.
I'm from Goldsmiths.
Yes.
And it wasn't as exhaustive of a list, and we've been talking a lot about testers and stuff like that. Less about the alternative routes as, for example, like podcast media or marketing. So I mean, it's very interesting. Point.
Yes.
We do a course which is called Emerging Technologies, where we apply, well, basically gamification to technologies and like build things in like AR or VR or whatever, HoloLens, what I've been working with, and it's very good. Well, we've also found out that a lot of big companies that have nothing to do with games, so ARUB's one of them, which is like an architectural consultant company. They just hired up 3 game devs because they can build quick visualizations of things in Unity, make an app, and then those guys are doing really well.
That's actually a very good point. My day job is working as a product manager in a transport company, and my experience as a game designer has helped us a lot actually develop and design our engagement strategy with potential customers, right? Because customer acquisition and customer retention are something that we think about constantly in games, and we already have a mindset of how to do that, as well as you mentioned, using Unity to be able to quickly prototype things rather than having somebody just build them from scratch in Java.
There is a big issue though at the moment where a lot of people in different industries that are not games don't understand what we can do. So you might be there, sitting there, being able to 3D model something that's amazing or program an application that's amazing. But if you're working for if you're a consultant for an engineering company, and I haven't got a clue what you're actually capable of doing, so it's always, again, back to like the portfolio stuff. It's always making sure that you're available. Your information or the way you present yourself is always some way you can find it, whether that be on GitHub or just a Facebook post. Just people need to be able to see it.
I do think there are some merging industries. They probably already have been, but they're becoming more apparent. So about a month ago, I was asked to go and speak at a conference called DSET, which is for the Defence Simulation Education and Training. So it was an event run by the Armed Forces, and NATO were there, and there were lots of companies from all over Europe. I was asked to speak as CEO of Women in Games because the armed forces are really interested in employing more women generally, and they see the area of simulation and training as a very good area to get talented young women involved in it. But also, I learned things that I didn't know about in relationship to simulation, and I could recognise how many of those skills that they need are being taught actually to students like yourselves, but you may never have ever considered a career in that field. So it was an eye-opener to me as much as anything, and I'm hoping to continue building that relationship, because another thing that I uncovered at the conference was they have very long procurement processes. So they order pieces of hardware and software, but it can take up to 2 years for the processes to go through the bureaucratic military channels, by which time the software and the hardware are already out of date. So there was a big discussion about actually setting up a really big lab so that they can start to build and produce their own software and hardware, or parts of it at least, and they can do that in-house rather than going through all the procurement processes. So, that there are these career pathways that I don't think we're they're not the most obvious, and probably the reason that you got into games, because you want to make games, you love games, but I think there are these alternatives, very interesting spaces, and I think, going back to Chris's talk, it's just about thinking that through, and I certainly agree with you about, you have to pay rent, you have to live, and so it's important to juggle those things. And I think also things can take time. Your career has to build, but each experience that you have helps you onto the next stage. So you should never feel disappointed if you don't get the creative director's job straight away, because it's something that you've probably got to work a bit on.
Yeah, and I mean that's also going to be a really good talking point on your portfolio and on your CV. Like what do you mean you worked for the armed forces and you created simulations? You know, what does that mean? How did your game design or game development education help you towards that? And what did you learn that you can then apply it back? Because as Jesse Shell was saying in their book, you have so many skill sets that can be applied into games that it's not a single discipline. You're not just like, oh yeah, I know how to use Microsoft Word, suddenly I know everything about being a game designer. No, we've had people at Ubisoft Bucharest who were coming in from being interior architects or from finishing an architecture degree, who were coming in from literature or from foreign languages. Because all of these skills are building on to this, to what you need to become a good game developer or a good game designer. Bees also is something that's really interesting, that can be applied in games. And the fact that games are more than just an entertainment product, but an artistic medium that you can use to be able to express something, is something that more people need to realize. You need to be able to tell your story.